Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 3 of my tutorial series on how to script for beginners on Roblox. And today we're going to cover something called loops, and specifically two kinds of loops, the for loop and the while loop. So without having to put it in too many confusing words, I'm just going to go ahead and show you an example of what a for loop is, what it looks like, and what it does. So as a test variable, we're going to say local sum equals 0. And hold on, there we go. Now, pay careful attention to the syntax of this because this is important. And syntax just means the way that the words are laid out, the way that the language is written. So we're going to say for, and you see it's blue because Studio has recognized this as a keyword for this particular loop, for this particular code you're going to be writing. So for I, and that's just a variable name, it's the same as constructing something that's local I, equals 0, 10, 1, do, and then if you press enter, it'll automatically put end for you, because this signifies the end of the block of code you're going to execute inside of this for loop. So what do these three numbers mean? 0 is your starting number. It's essentially like saying local I equals 0. That's what I've got right now. 10 is where you want to be. So you can say local goal equals 10. And these don't matter. This is just my way of representing what each of these do. And 1 is your increment that you use to get to your goal. So local increment equals 1. So what this means is this function will say sum equals sum plus, actually we'll just say sum equals I. And what this means is every time this line is executed, this variable I is going to go up by 1. So this inner code right here will be executed 10 times because that was our goal. So let's just go ahead and say print sum and see this in action. So let's see what happened. As you can see, we started from 0. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10. So this actually executed 11 times because we started with 0. So this allows you to do quite a few things. Pretty much any time you need a line of code to execute a certain preset number of times for whatever purpose, you use a for loop. And there are other ways to write this. This is just the long formal way. You could also do something like 110. I equals 110, and you don't have to do the increment at all. Hold on, let's stop that. And okay, run. And you don't have to include the increment, and it will still do the same thing because the default is to increase by 1. Now, you can do other things. You don't always have to go up. You can start by going down with negatives. So now our I has changed to 10, our starting point. Our goal is now 0, and our increment is -1. Now you'll use this if there's a certain number of instances. Say a player has a certain amount of items that they're trying to sell. They click a button, and the button says sell 10, and you do a for loop, which it's kind of a bad example because you would just sell times 10, but you get the idea. Something that slowly ticks away and drains a number until it's 0. So let's see what happens. We start with 10 and we work our way all the way down to 0. And you don't only have to use whole numbers, you can also use decimals. And decimals are useful if you kind of want to gradually do something like The best example I can think of is changing the transparency of something like a tree if you've just cut it down, or an object if you've just destroyed it and you want it to fade out of view. You can use positive or negative decimals to slowly increment something. And you can even use the I right here. See how we use sum equals I? You can use that as like, say we had part.transparency equals I, and then it slowly goes down from 1 to 0 with a negative 0.1 increment, something like that. So the next loop we're going to talk about is the while loop. And the while loop is useful for doing something for a specific amount of time until a condition is met. It can be as long as that takes, or as short as that takes, or it can be throughout the entire game. If you have like a time script that you want to keep track of the time, you would use like a while loop to constantly check the time of day to change your lights or something like that, lighting in the place. So the syntax is pretty simple. It's while condition do end. Now condition is not actually what you type, it's just what your condition is going to be. So if you want your loop to last forever, you can say true, or you can say while sum equals 0, 2 equals. This is a Boolean operator, so instead of saying sum equals 0 with one equal sign, you have to put 2 when it's in an if or while statement, and we'll get into if statements later, conditions. But essentially, you give the while loop a condition to follow, and it will continue to operate anything inside here until that condition is no longer the case, until it's no longer true. Or you can even say while sum does not equal 0. Sorry about that, it's actually a tilde sign. Not equal 0, that's what that means. And we'll say like this is 1. And let's put this into use. So we'll say 5, and we'll say sum equals sum plus 1. And we'll say print sum. So this is going to keep running until sum, change that to equals, until sum equals 5. Sorry. Less than or equal to 5. So this is a different kind of operator as well. This is a less than sign. So you have equals to, you have not equals to, you have greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, or just greater than or less than. And what equals to means, obviously, it's just if it's less than 5 or equal to 5, it will be okay. But as soon as it hits 6, it needs to stop in this case. So let's just see what happens. Okay, so you see we started with 1. 1 is less than or equal to 5. Sum became sum plus 1, which is 2. And then we printed out the sum. Then we stayed inside the condition because 2 is still less than or equal to 5. And we did the same thing again. Sum is 3. All the way up until 5. And now you say, why did it print out 6? Because it's supposed to stop when it equals 5, not when it equals 6. So what happened is the 5 that we got after plugging in 4 plus 1 is 5, print 5, 5 equals 5, 5 plus 1 is 6, print the sum, 6, and then it checks again. So a while loop will complete what's inside of it before it checks this condition again. So the sum becoming 6 right here is still going to allow this block of code to run. The block of code will stop running when everything has been accomplished, right? Everything has been run inside, and then it checks this statement again. That's the sequence of events. It checks, performs, 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 checks, performs, performs, and so on. So be careful when setting the parameters of your while loop to make sure that it's where you want it to be and that your code isn't being done too many times. Or this can really pretty much be anything. If you do while true, you're going to want to add a delay of some sort. If you don't have a delay, then you can actually cause a few errors in your game. And the simplest way to do that is just to do wait with parentheses, or if you want a certain increment, you can pass the value that you want. So you can make it wait 1 second, you can make it wait 0.1 seconds, 2, 3, 10, 100. If you want it to be some kind of round-based system or regenerate your map every 200 seconds or so, things like that. So let's see another example of a while loop in action. Let's say while sum is greater than 10, and we'll start at 50, do, and we're going to add a small wait so that we don't overload the system with too many executable lines at once. We're going to say sum minus 1, and let's see what happens. And there we go. As you can see, that happens fairly rapidly, even with a delay. So that's why a delay is important, so that too many lines aren't executed at once, kind of stumbling over each other. But yeah, that's essentially how you use a while loop. Go ahead and practice. I'll write out another for loop as well. For I equals 0, 10, let's say 2, do. I equals I plus, actually no, we don't have to do that. Sum equals sum plus I. Okay. So in this instance, the while loop's going to run first, and then this is going to run. So 2 examples, for loop, while loop. Try them on your own, play around with different things. You can use these to edit part properties or pretty much anything in the game. You can use these to clone different models into the game, one after another. There are a lot of uses for these. You're going to use these pretty much every time you script anything complex. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Please practice on your own. That's the only way you're going to get better at scripting, is through a lot of practice and getting familiar with the syntax. And if you guys have any questions, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, join my Discord, and I can help you with any problems you have in person. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.